We're going to transition. We're going to shift gears. We're going to shift our focus to an interview with GasBuddy, specifically Patrick Haan of GasBuddy. And this does tie into what we were just speaking about, because since the war in Iran, we've seen gas prices rise drastically here in the United States of America. Patrick, thanks so much for joining us. This is actually, you've done so much work with us here at the station. I feel like I've seen your face so many times. We've never met before. I'm Connor. It's wonderful to meet you, and thanks for joining us this morning.
It certainly highlights the gravity of the times that we're all talking about what is impacting us at the pump, but thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, those pump prices are something that has been a major topic of discussion here in the United States. They seem to be hovering around $4 for a slightly extended period now. Have we seen some stabilization, or are we expecting this to continue to spike based on sort of just general observation?
Well, we've seen a little bit slower of an increase the last 2 weeks. The first 2 or 3 weeks, as the market was adjusting to this shock of U.S. attacks on Iran, we did see a bit of a jump, much more accelerated spike in early March. And now that this has become kind of the norm, this back and forth, the increases have continued, but they've not been as significant as what we saw the first couple of weeks. Now, for diesel, it's been a bit more of a different story. Diesel prices just continue to actively spike. Diesel now nationally at about $5.62 a gallon. That's only about 20 cents a gallon away from reaching an all-time record high. So we continue to trend up. But the products that are more produced, diesel not being one of them, gasoline is the most produced product out of a barrel of oil, diesel second, jet fuel third. And if you flip those, jet fuel's seen the biggest impact, diesel the second largest impact, gasoline the least impact of those three, simply because production. So, well, you know, as long as we continue to see rhetoric and escalations, we'll continue to see gas prices likely going up in time. And there's really no telling how high it will go. It's very contingent on whether or not the Strait of Hormuz will eventually reopen, or if it will remain closed. The longer it remains closed, the higher gas prices go.
Yeah, and this is, you know, we've thus far this morning, we've seen that rhetoric has in fact continued, or sort of combative rhetoric, I guess, has in fact continued. When we talk about diesel being close to an all-time high, have we seen that start to impact industries that rely on that? And if so, in what way?
I mean, absolutely. You know, truckers are suddenly spending hundreds of dollars more every fill up, and that is going to ripple down to what you and I buy in the grocery store. Maybe not immediately, but the end users, like the delivery companies, I mean, even Amazon now ratcheting up fuel surcharges on delivered items, and you're going to see much more of that. Not only are there going to be fuel surcharges, but you know, there's going to be an increase in cost of the items that you're buying, especially at the grocery store, especially things like fruits and vegetables and produce. I mean, all of that, you know, going to see a jump in price, because keep in mind, the grocery store is probably the most ripe for an impact in the price of diesel, because all of it flows very much just in time. Those fruits and vegetables have only so much time to get to that store, and diesel is the fuel that powers much of that.
So basically, price at the pump is where it begins, but this is something that will matriculate all throughout the economy. I know that people have a sharp eye on grocery stores, always looking out for that, especially since the last 2 to 4 years have included such fluctuations in grocery prices. Is there any sort of sector of society that this will stretch to an impact that people maybe wouldn't have at the forefront of their mind, but down the road it will sort of have those impacts?
Well, I mean, and there's so many of those impacts, right? Cascading impacts. I mean, I think of all the gig share workers, the Uber drivers, the delivery drivers that are paying that fuel, and they're, you know, working for such a low hourly wage already that, you know, apps like Lyft have increased the amount of fuel rebates that those types of drivers get. So, I mean, it's hard to put into words, I mean, how widespread this is going to be. And it's come at such an elevated pace that businesses are really scrambling. I mean, even airlines are kind of scrambling to pass along the cost, with United, JetBlue, and other major airlines announcing an increase in baggage fees that, honestly, as an analyst, that $10 increase is pretty mundane, because the price of jet fuel has essentially doubled in the last 6 weeks. So almost everything is going to see an impact that you buy, that you drive to go get. Just so many things are likely to reignite inflation in a way certainly not intended, but is going to be very significant. I mean, diesel prices now again 20 cents a gallon away from an all-time record high. The pace of increases for diesel has been historic. That is, we've never, even in 2022, we had not seen the pace of diesel climbing this significantly for this long a period of time. And that's really why, businesses are going to be looking very quickly at how to pass those costs along. But so many impacts that can't necessarily be felt yet that will be in the weeks ahead.
And even as you talk, I think about us here in Virginia Beach, and you start to talk about airlines and how they've been impacted and how those prices will eventually trickle down to consumers. If you have families who decide we're not going to take a vacation this summer because it's just too expensive, and then us here in Virginia Beach are so heavily dependent on our tourism industry for success. I mean, it just the tentacles of this thing are so widespread. It's difficult to get our arms around here at this point in time. Now we talk about, we look at the map pretty often, sort of showing the different prices throughout the United States. Obviously, every state government, every state economy is different. When we look at Virginia and we see that even with our increases, it's still quite a bit lower than Illinois or Washington or Oregon. What speaks to the differences throughout the U.S. in gas prices when this is something that so clearly affects all of us?
Well, a lot of it is driven by taxes. And, you talk about a state like Illinois, a lot of that is tax, but there can be regional differences. You look at the West Coast map behind me, the West Coast very distinctly red. There can be other dynamics. Not only does California have the nation's highest gasoline taxes, but they have environmental programs like a low carbon fuel standard, a cap and trade program to reduce emissions that drive up prices that consumers pay. California also has its own special blend. So does Arizona. So do a lot of big cities across the country. Some of those standards have been eased, but then the West Coast, an acute problem. California is suffering from years of additional regulations and rules, and those regulations and rules have essentially pushed refineries out of the state. Refineries can't operate freely in the state of California. They have to operate by California's rules. And a lot of refineries, in fact, two of them saying, well, we've had enough of it. So refineries in California have been shutting down, and that is putting California in more harm's way because the rules and regulations are so onerous to the industry that they've thrown in the towel. So it's impacts like those, the secondary and collateral damage from misguided policies that are now exacerbating the impact in areas of the West Coast. And it's not just California that is paying the price for California's policies, but it's neighboring states like Oregon, Nevada, Arizona, all of those states now really beholden to California's rules and regulations that have caused refineries to shut down. So I mean, there's always a collateral cost to policies, rules, and regulations, and this is why you really need to be careful about implementing those, because there can now be secondary impacts. Some areas of California now, $8 a gallon diesel is the average price in the Bay Area. So again, there's a cost to every rule and legislation. Those costs are now very surfacing to the top in real time. And those coastal areas as well, by the way. Coastal areas much more susceptible to price increases because those coastal areas can easily see gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel exported to global markets, the same markets that are now under significant duress because of the Strait of Hormuz essentially being closed.
And we talk about, the everyday impacts just on people's wallets as well. We dive into these widespread impacts that we see on industry and in the future, but just even people going to the gas station today are going to feel it a little bit. I'm wondering, this might be naive. I mean, these impacts might be impossible to escape, but is there anything people can do if they want to or if they need to fill up their gas tank in the smartest way possible? Is there any way to make this system work for them as much as it can? Are there any sort of loopholes you can exploit in terms of timing or location of where you go and get your gas, how you go and get your gas?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hacks that one can do to save themselves on fuel. I mean, your top GasBuddy users save $40 to $60 a month through three main categories of doing things. First of all, how you drive. Your car and the fuel you consume is heavily contingent on your driving habits. So if you're one that accelerates rapidly, if you go above the speed limit, if you drive a lot on the highway, there's huge potential benefits by reducing your pace of acceleration, slowing down, using cruise control, removing excess weight from your vehicle. That can drive fuel efficiency increases. You can get 25 to 35% more miles per tank. So your tank is lasting longer if you drive more fuel efficiently. When you need to fill up, using apps like GasBuddy or Google Maps to find lower prices near you. Obviously, fueling up at a lower price will help reduce the price you pay. But then when you select a station, using things like loyalty programs, a lot of loyalty programs will reduce your price 5 to 10 cents a gallon. You'd mentioned the best day of the week. Generally, Sundays are a better day of the week to fill up, and Thursdays tend to be more expensive. Payments hacks, using a GasBuddy payments card can save 33 cents. There are credit cards that offer gas rebates of 3 to 4%. Some stations have cash discounts. So those three areas, driving more fuel efficiently, shopping around, and making sure how you pay gets a benefit, all of those can add up to $40, $60, $70 a month in savings.
Okay, excellent. Great advice. A lot of helpful stuff. I know everybody is looking for any little thing they can do to try to provide some relief, and you certainly have given us a lot of options, so we appreciate it. And, is there anything else that you want to add here before we let you go?
Well, keep in mind what happens in the days ahead will dictate where gas prices go. A continued closure of the Strait of Hormuz is going to continue to negatively push gas prices up, whereas if there is some improvement there, gas prices may eventually start to decline. But we are getting into the territory where gas prices may be elevated into the summer. So plan accordingly, budget a little bit more, and hopefully you can reduce the impact of rising prices.
All right, Patrick Haan from GasBuddy, everybody. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you joining us, giving us that insight, a more in-depth look at a topic that's on everybody's minds. Thanks so much, Patrick. Have a great Tuesday, man.
Thanks for having me.
And, it's amazing to look at that Strait of Hormuz, a small water passageway on the, for us here in America, on the far side of the world, and the impacts that just that, tiny little piece of nature can have globally here with our interconnected system and everybody's dependence on oil and gas. It really is something, and everyone has their eyes on that strait, especially today, seeing if that can reopen in any way possible, both to provide relief at the pump and, of course, with the geopolitical situation that we stand in right now, which we updated everyone on before that interview. Now,